I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, January 4th, 2017. And could I ask Director Martin to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have a roll call, please?
Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Here. Okay, for the next item for adopting the agenda, I've got a request from staff to move item 2.2 to the consent calendar. So if I could get a motion to...
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as amended, moving item 2.2 to the consent calendar. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Carried unanimously. Okay, we have a presentation.
Yeah, so I'll jump in there. So in addition to providing safe, reliable, and cost-effective water and wastewater services, one of the primary functions of the district is to be a good steward of the ratepayers' funds. And one way to do that is to identify and prevent fraud. So one of our staff members, Finance Manager John Fusco, has taken it upon himself to become a certified fraud examiner. So in order to do that, he achieved this by becoming a member of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, studied for an exam, applied for the exam, and took a very rigorous exam. And it consisted of fraud prevention and detection, financial transactions and fraud schemes, investigation, and the law related to fraud. So John now has the tools and expertise to benefit the district by knowing how to prevent and detect fraud and advise us on policy recommendations and how to implement them related to sound internal controls. So I'd like to personally thank John for getting that certification, and I'd like to ask John to come up and join the president up in front of the dais to take a photo.
All right, John.
No safety manager, don't worry.
Krista, wishing he was taller.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, on behalf of the board, I'd like to present you this certified fraud.
That's very nice.
Wow, big.
Or secret certificate.
Oh, the official one.
I know, I told you, be careful.
The back.
Just in case.
Always the backup plan.
Yeah. Before you
Too fast.
go back, John, so now that you're in charge of fraud, what the heck does that mean? I mean, really, I gotta be looking over my shoulder?
Yes.
Always,
You've been budgeted.
always,
I'll need some back tax
of all
return.
people.
Oh, tax return. Oh, Lord have mercy, take me away now.
But seriously, just to use the skills and the knowledge that I've obtained by going through this process to apply those to the district when it comes to internal controls and working with our auditors and areas where we can improve and safeguard our assets.
So it really is looking at just the stream of invoice, billing, checks, all that, to make sure that somebody's not adding dollars to it.
That's a big part of it, yeah, absolutely.
Very good. Well, congratulations.
Congratulations, John, this adds to your portfolio of knowledge. You give classes now, don't you?
Pardon?
Don't you give classes now for a local university?
Oh, yeah, I teach at 3 colleges, yeah.
And what do you teach? What are the subjects in each one of the, which 3 colleges are they?
I teach financial accounting, managerial accounting, and government not-for-profit accounting at San Diego Mesa College, at Miracosta College, and Cal State San Marcos is the first semester I'll be there.
What time do those classes start?
Various times, yeah, different times of the day.
Hopefully you don't have any on Wednesdays.
No Wednesdays.
No Wednesday.
Wednesdays is strictly reserved for us.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, this is the time for public comment. Persons wishing to address a matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until a matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policy. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. A request to speak form is required to be submitted to the executive secretary prior to the start of the meeting if possible. Public comments should start by stating name, address, and topic. The board is not permitted during this time to enter into a dialogue with the speaker. I have no request to speak.
I do happen to see a familiar
Oh, okay.
face who may be filling out a public,
You might get one here
Speaking.
shortly.
Well, we have
Is that you?
we have a second time that you can do that.
oh, okay. Moving on.
Okay, I guess we'll move on. We don't
Yeah,
have any
move
further.
on.
I think he's ready.
We do have one, okay.
Thanks for the courtesy.
Well, this is for anything not on the agenda. And so, is your item on the agenda?
No.
Thank you.
Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court, San Marcos. SB 814 is law. I saw it referenced in one of the issues of Splash. One of the things it does is concentrate heavy fines for overuse on individually metered residences. It notably leaves out master valves, master meters for high-density apartments. I think that we should not have master valves in new construction. As defined by the state, the biggest problem is water waste, which is leaks. In single-family dwellings, the rate is around 3%, and in apartments, it was measured in Berkeley at 13.7%. If we are truly going to have the pain of conservation or rationing across the board, all new construction should have individual meters for every apartment. The other problem with 814 is it attacks excessive use of water. As of right now, an average apartment, according to EWD figures, is about 250 gallons per day per apartment. There's approximately 2.1 residents per apartment. That comes out to about 125 gallons per day. A home resident right now has also been put as around 250 rather than 200, but it has an average residence of about 3.1. That cuts their water use to about 80 gallons per day. But it goes even worse since they've already cut back around 20%. They're down around 60, 70% gallons per day. If these apartment dwellers and these landlords of large apartments are to equally share the burden, then they should have individual meters, because without individual meters on each apartment, they can't track leaks. As a matter of fact, some apartment and cities charge extra administrative fee, anywhere from 2 to 7%. They have a motivation, economic motivation, to waste or use excessive water. I think this should be addressed, and new construction should all be individual meters. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or a member of the public requests that a particular items be removed from the consent calendar, in which case will be considered separately under action items. Director Martin?
I'd like to pull 1.2, 1.4, 1.6.
Six, okay. Mr. Hunsaker, you also listed the consent calendar item 1.3. Did you wish to speak on that?
My questions was on the,
Could you hold a minute? I'd like to go ahead and get a motion to approve
Yes.
the remaining items.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve items 1.1, 1.5, and 1.7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, why don't we go to Mr. Hunsaker first for 1.3?
my question concerns the report on reserve activity. I didn't see any mention on it on the rate stabilization fund. And I found that we are accumulating quite a bit of money in our reserves. And doesn't seem to be any of it being paid for what was supposed to be the first consideration of the reserve policy, which was to take care of medical benefits programs. There is some income noted on this month's report from water and sewer, especially sewer. And it seems like there should be some sort of notation about the state rate stabilization fund, where it goes. I went back to the previous approved financial report for 2015, 2016, I believe it was. Or was it? It was the last one that you approved. It's not the present one that's under works. And it noted there was a rate stabilization fund on the report, but it showed a $16 million deficit. And I'm just wondering if the reserve activity shouldn't reflect what's going on in the rate stabilization reserve as well. Thank you.
Would staff like to address that at this time?
Yes, thank you. We have no rate stabilization money, that's why it's not listed. If we had it, there would be a separate line item for rate stabilization funds. I'm not sure what the deficit, we don't carry a deficit in rate stabilization, either we have it or we don't. We're more prone to maintain state rate stabilization when our replacement reserves are above our targets. And at the very bottom of that page that Mr. Hunsaker is referring to, page 42, are our ceilings for those money. So for the replacement reserves, 27 million in water and 42 million in sewer. So we're not quite there yet to have a comfortable reserve for replacements. Have to keep in mind that we have, I keep saying 800 million, is probably close to $1 billion in replacement value of our core infrastructure. So in that context, that's not a heck of a lot of money, plus it's absorbing those deficits in those other funds. So even though it looks like we have 34 million in reserves for sewer, that's really paying for that deficit next to it as well. So we have to net that out to look at that. I'm trying to think what are the other questions were. Yeah, we had rate stabilization money, I think, going into, that's been, I think, a couple of years since we had rate stabilization money. We just haven't had any recently. So I'm not sure if that answers all questions.
Okay, thank you. Item one, well, should we vote on it first?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve consent calendar item 1.3. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, consent item 1.2. Director Murray.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions on the warrant list. First one's on page 33. It's Best and Kruger. We're paying them $4,000 for 2015 general rate case. Can you explain to me what that is for, why we're paying it now?
James can answer that first.
Okay, James will answer that.
Thank you, Director Martin. That is the general rate case with the SUG rate study that we talked about in closed session, in which I forgot how many agencies, 7 or 8 agencies have joined together to challenge the San Diego Gas and Electric rate increases and the rate structure, because it penalizes the government agency specifically to offset revenue losses on residents. And so at Best and Krieger is the law firm that's taking the lead on that, and that is our portion of the defense so far.
Has that been our total portion to date, or is that 4,000 a year, or 4,000?
It's, I'd have to look up, I don't know what the total amount is, so I could come back to you, come back to the general manager with that number. And also, I believe that there's been 2 invoices. The first one, I think, was about 2,000 and change, and this is the second one for 4,000. Those are the only 2 that's been, but I'll have to confirm that.
Yeah, I'd like to know how much we're in this for, and if it's ongoing.
Yeah, we can find that out.
Okay, thank you. And James, I think you'll be for the next one too. Black and Beach, the next one down. Water and Sewer Master Plan and Recycled Water Plan. And that's $45,000.
Yes, Black and Veatch is our consultant that's doing our water, wastewater, and recycled water master plan. And then the recycled water business plan, that portion of it is what we got the grant for. So that was about $150,000, $160,000 budget. And we're getting $75,000 of that reimbursed. So we've actually been working a lot on that in the last several months, because we're planning on trying to come close to the end of this month, beginning of next month, with a workshop to the board on both the recycled water portion of it, which we're getting about half of it reimbursed by the state, and of course the master plan portion of it.
Okay, on the recycled side of it, just explain to me, are we planning on doing something more than we do now? And if so, what facility is going to be necessary for it?
Yeah, the grant is for $75,000, and it's a 50-50 match, and our total is about $160,000, and it's for a recycled water business plan, and also we added a water, basically infrastructure, helping with the term, the water resource plan, water resource facilities plan. So we're looking at what is a real viable option and what are the costs associated with it to actually, if we want to expand a recycled water system for ourselves in the future, where is the market, where is the possibility, what's the cost? We're going to have some of those information, a lot of it vetted out for you guys at the workshop, and then moving on with board direction from there on.
Thank you. My third question, go further down that page, is I believe it's that page. Manpower. Someone can find it, oh, there it is. About 3/4 of the way down, Manpower Temp Services. When I asked about this, I believe in November, I thought that was done with. You know, we've filled that position. And I'm trying to figure out, I understand that if you don't have an HR department, you generally use Manpower Services for a lot of reasons, saves you money. But when you have an internal HR department, why would you also use Manpower? An outside HR department?
We're not using Manpower as an HR department. We have a temporary worker in our customer service department that we hired through Manpower. We didn't hire them, or leasing them, if you will, this person over in customer service. We had a retirement there, and from that retirement, we had an open recruitment for that position. The cashier receptionist was the candidate selected. She moved back away from cashier reception into customer service. So now we still have basically one person down in customer service. So that's why the person from Manpower is working customer service.
Continues.
Yeah.
That's about $700 a week, not cheap.
Not cheap, but then again, we're not paying benefits either.
Right. Oh, I understand. I understand the use of manpower in the HR department. I would think these are jobs that are in high demand by a lot of people. I would think. But
If
what do I
we
know?
go out and hire somebody, we're actually the district would be hiring that person, as opposed to Manpower, where we can get an employee in, and as soon as we're done with the employee, so to speak, we can let them go.
Right. But you're not done with them, you're hiring them in. The
No.
last person you hired in, did you not?
The person, the cashier receptionist,
Whoever you were paying for last time, I don't know which category.
oh, it's the same person. It is the same person.
So that continues to this day.
Yes,
Still on manpower, we haven't hired them, we're still paying manpower.
yes.
Are we not hiring them because we don't like them?
No, that's not it at all. We're,
Then why did you hire them?
Well, we're trying to prevent increases in staffing levels, so we're taking advantage of what we see as the lowest cost option to provide the services that we need. So what John was explaining is that we had a change internally. We promoted somebody internally, so the need went from one position to another position, but we will continue to rely on manpower to provide those services until we figure out whether we need to fill that position on a full-time basis or not. So that evaluation has not been completed yet as to what positions need to be done.
As the value of that we are not paying benefits, that's the savings to using Manpower, and also that Manpower hired them, and we're hiring through Manpower.
Sure, and we're paying considerably less through manpower than we would if we had hired that person as a full-time employee.
So we're just waiting till we're ready.
Yeah, and we want to make sure.
If we are ready.
Sure, because once you hire an employee, it's a long-term commitment, and I'm not sure that there's a long-term demonstrated need. So we want to complete the evaluation of our staffing levels.
And you know, that makes perfect sense to me. What you just said, you haven't demonstrated a need for that person, you might not need them.
Right,
That
so,
makes sense. Thank you.
Director Sinelli, that question.
You just answered my question. Thank you, Glenn.
okay.
Coming down, we have PC Specialists. PC Specialist, Inc., a tablet. It looks like $1,800. Is this the tablet that came down from Mount Sinai?
They would have gotten two.
That is,
Yes.
there you go.
It's on
Front and back.
33.
It is a tablet to use in the field. It's a more, I don't know the exact model, make, and everything right now. I can go grab the invoice, but it's, IT purchased it for use. Yeah, it's like a laptop that's a little bit more durable. It's a tablet though. Kind of-
Okay.
no.
So it's more of a laptop than just a tablet like we have, which, as you know, I just endear.
The lines are getting blurry anymore between what's a tablet, what's a PC, what's a laptop. So everything kind of does everything anymore, but it's,
And a new one would be as a replacement, or is that something new that we need because?
for the most part, the replacements, yes. Exactly which this one was, I'm not sure.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, cameras, RMJ Technologies, cameras for CCTV vehicle 252 and 264. Did both these cameras go out at the same time? That's unusual.
Director Martin, those were on the budget for replacement. Over time, as you can imagine, the sewer environment's extremely hard on them, so those were due to be replaced. That's what those cameras are. It's for CCTV of the sewer systems.
Thank you very much. With that, I move that we accept the warrant list, item 1.2.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve consent calendar item 1.2. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, consent calendar item 1.4, cancellation of temporary off-site water service agreement.
Yeah, I apologize for not understanding it completely. But as I was reading through it, I was trying to understand this temporary permit was made in 1970, and it was absorbed in 1975. And the way I'm looking at it, we're just getting around and doing something about it now. So I know that can't be right, so maybe you can set me straight on it.
No, you actually have it absolutely correct there. 1970 is when
I was afraid of that.
was when the offsite agreement was executed. In approximately 1975, a water main was actually constructed down at Finchling, which fronts the gentleman's property. Now, we have approximately, as we're finding out, about 218 of these temporary offsite agreements currently. And yeah, the district just has not pursued these here in the past as far as trying to keep up with those that don't necessarily need to be offsite agreements anymore.
Well, let me ask you this, what is the benefit for the property owner? Because I noticed that's the only property owner in that area that has a swimming pool. So I'm guessing he gets his water a lot cheaper on the temporary than he does now.
No, same cost.
So it's been 30 years and,
Yeah, and the benefit for the gentleman is it does clear off his title, but for the most part, it's really one of the district's conditions is when that happens, the district is supposed to go to the property owner and say, okay, you now have a line in front of your property, you need to connect to that new pipeline.
right. So there's no financial, I mean, other than, what's in it for the district to grant him a temporary and then put in a pipeline and then not connect? I'm trying to,
Yeah,
Just go
there's
through the
no
cracks?
financial incentive there. And so we're developing a program actually right now where we're going to go through, we're going to look at the maps and find out how many of these actually exist that can be converted from temporary to permanent. And then we'll actually start sending letters to the property owners.
so the only way we knew about this one theoretically is that the homeowner came to us and said, hey, I got this lien, I need to get off my property, I'm trying to sell it.
Yeah, it just, we found a couple of these that kind of, they come up just because the develop, or the homeowner has requested something, and we go back in the files and find out, oh, wait a minute, yeah, we have this agreement from back in 1970, whatever it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was hoping that wasn't the answer, but I believe that that's what I saw, but thank you very much.
So if I may add to that, Director Martin, so when this came to our attention, we decided collectively from a staff level to be more proactive and identify how many of these situations we have. And as Rob mentioned, there's a little over 200. So, and now we'll get into the process of figuring out what do we want to do now that we know where they exist. And we could take it in one mass action or bring it forward to the board to, if the conditions warrant, to go ahead and terminate those agreements.
Thank you very much. And with that, I move to approve consent item 1.4.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 1.4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, 1.6. Fat soils and grease program update.
Right. I would have to say, in the beginning of this fat soil and grease program, I was very tentative and concerned about what the district was actually doing. And over the 2 years or 3 years that our gallant captain over there has been chairing and doing this thing, I've heard nothing but great remarks from all the restaurateurs in town. As you can tell by my size, I frequent quite a few of them. How nice it was to have that gentleman come in from the water district and help us with, some of them didn't understand the problem. Some of them did and tried to cop ways around it, I'm sure. But I just want to thank staff for doing a thoroughly great job. Great report, but great PR work out in the community from Vallecitos Water District. So, thank you.
And thank you for taking the opportunity to pass that along. I do appreciate it.
Yeah. And unless he has anything to say, I move to approve agenda item 1.6.
Second. There's a motion and a second to approve 1.6. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. And just to clarify, we did approve 2.2 under the consent calendar as well. I didn't list that one at the beginning, but we did. Okay, on to action items. 2.1, request for extension of requirements for annexation of certain property designated as San Marcos Highlands
Rob, go
into
ahead.
the Vallecitos Water District. I won't list, and the Sewer Improvement District. I won't list the APN.
Thank you, President Elithar, members of the board here. The item I have here is a request to extend the completion of annexation requirements for the San Marcos Highlands development. As you recall, back on July 20th, 2016, the board did approve the conditions for annexation for this project. That came with the required completion timeframe of 180 days, which would take this to January 16, 2017. The developer has come to us here with an updated schedule on their part here. They have submitted a LAFCO application, which was just done last month or is going to be done this month. This week. Thank you, sir. LAFCO's most likely going to take 4 to 6 months to chew on it there before approving this, and then the developer does not expect to have a final map probably until the fall of 2017. Therefore, the developers requested a 1-year extension to the annexation requirements. Staff has updated the annexation fees here in your staff reports to reflect 2017 rates. And with that, staff would recommend a 1-year extension of completion of the annexation requirements. We'd love to answer any questions the board has.
Dr. Martin.
Is 6 months a standard boilerplate thing that we do, even knowing that LAFCO is coming up? I mean, is that something, rather than have the pitchforks out here 2 or 3 times, if we only have them out here once, it's nicer. Isn't there a way that staff can identify it's going to go through LAFCO, it's going to take longer, we'll give it a year?
Yes, Director Martin, we can certainly do that there. 6 months is a standard time that we do for typical annexations because most of them don't require LAFCO approval because they don't require a change of our sphere of influence. This is the first one that we've had that change our sphere of influence for many, many years here. But yeah, going forward in the future, we can definitely up that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Before we do that, we have one speaker on this item, so I'd like to ask Mr. Hunsaker to come up.
No.
One of the considerable growing concerns is about the gradual degradation of environmental laws and citizen protections against overdevelopment. I happened to look at the San Marcos Highlands EIR. It only stated that water could be provided either by the VID or Vallecitos. So what we have here is a city, San Marcos, which has pretty much thrown out the rule book about accepting EIRs and water being a very key resource that's supposed to be part of it. Now we're seeing even further degradation, special exemptions, and avoidance of coming up with a final map. Why does this one not have a water assurance report at least? And I don't see how this extension really provides any public benefit. And I do see it as a direct threat. My also concern is the amount of legislation, special interest legislation coming out of Sacramento, predominantly the by right laws. And my concern is that once this is rezoned, the by right will come in probably in September, since it's a finance implementation bill. And one of the things that the Sacramento is doing is starting to eliminate for special interests connection fees. Right now it's just for granny flats, but it's established a very bad precedent that they expect that ratepayers will pay more to pick up for what previously the developers were supposed to take up and not overcharge the rest of the ratepayers to benefit these other people. So I'm concerned about whether or not LAFCO, which is also under the beginning of attack, particularly for the Sequan Sequan tribe, and that can't come about. And this is also looking like the end of the year. So is 218, are the environmental laws, are these slowly being shredded? And this is a big question, for example, for the Newland Sierra project. So it can come about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I can assure you, Mr. Hunsinger and the public, that having paid a connection fee for my granny shack, I will vehemently oppose any discussion about giving that away to any future ones. So you can take that off your list tonight. Thank you.
I didn't fill out a slip, but I will.
Okay.
My name is Jim Simmons, 160 Industrial Street, San Marcos. I represent the Highlands. And as usual, Mr. Hunsaker has presented a broad spectrum of information that was meant to confuse himself, and he succeeded in doing that. We have followed all the rules and regulations. We're looking to save the district and its ratepayers some money by not repeating this twice in the next process. And if there's a problem with moving forward under that process, you guys will recognize what it is, and we are stepping up to the responsibility of paying the rates that are due in 2017. So this is a benefit to the ratepayers, and I hope you will approve it and correct the record that the City of San Marcos has, in fact, followed all the rules of CEQA and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
My motion stands.
We have a motion to approve the
Second.
extension and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, 2.3, since we've already approved 2.2 under consent. 2.3 is review ordinance number 201.
This was an item brought before us, a request by Director Hernandez, and just simply it's calculation of what the shift in time costs in overtime, and that's for a whole year. Just looking back at the meetings in 2016, the individual employees that stayed for those meetings that were more than an hour and a half in length. And that's what you have before you, and there's no recommendation here, just provided for your information. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Director Hernandez.
But I was the one that asked to have this brought before the board, as I was in agreement with the experiment to move the meeting to the 5 o'clock hour to potentially allow more public participation. And from the report, you can see that was included, that public participation was really only on some very serious and limited agenda items. And so we spent almost $10,000 on overtime for hourly employees, and for salaried employees who are not able to take a comp relief as we did back in the day, they just have to suck it up. So I would like to move that we move the meeting back to the 3 p.m. hour, with the caveat that if there is an agenda item that we clearly understand, like the 218 or the capacity, that those could be moved to a later hour, but that the standard meetings, the normal meetings hour would be to 3 p.m.
It's my understanding we can't take action on this tonight.
Right, you will have to bring it back because it's in a modification to the ordinance.
Oh, okay.
We just need direction from you. You can so motion. if
Doing
that's-
a motion for direction?
Yeah,
Then I would make that into a motion for direction of staff to bring it back with the modification.
Question, Director Martin.
More of a statement. I certainly understand where the director's coming from. I kind of disagree. I disagree that the reason for changing it to 5 o'clock was transparency. Just the same as the reason for us having it televised is transparency. People may or may not watch. Most don't. People may or may not show up at a meeting. Most don't. But the opportunity for them is there. I ran on it 4 years ago, transparency, and one of the things I ran on was moving the meetings to 5 o'clock, which, to be honest, I thought 6 o'clock was more appropriate. It's what our city council does. We don't have to follow them. But moving them to 5 o'clock made more sense that people could come. And in extenuating circumstances, when we're going to have something large, we can move it to 6 o'clock. But I think as a standard time, you have to have a standard time for all your meetings, and it should remain at 5 o'clock as it has. Because people don't show up, same as people not watching, we still televise. And like I said, it was a campaign issue on transparency. We're here for the public good, they're not here for our good. And as I look at this, and interesting, and I think I'm glad that someone saved all of this information. But I don't see the homework to go with it. I don't see where the expenses are. In order to come up with a number of $10,000, you had to come up with some expenses. And I don't see that homework done. I'd like to see that done. I'd like to see the homework done showing the per hour, showing that also with some amount of give that we work on a 980 program, and that 980 program allows for their twice a month to be a later staying time for everybody. Not just for management, but for everybody. And that's built into a 980 program. Now, if we don't follow it, that's another question. But if that's what our MOU is, and that's what our understanding is, then we need to stick with a 980 program. And we make that long day our meeting day, which is the way it should be. So I would like to get the arithmetic and the math, and once I can see the 980 program on here and showing where it's costing us this additional $10,000, which I don't see. But if you can show it to me, seeing is believing. If you can show it to me, I don't have a problem. It's not here at this point. I would recommend that we table the conversation till we can have that arithmetic in front of us and then move forward. But we need to have that math in front of us to move forward, in my opinion. But still, it's transparency, and that's why we did it. We didn't do it for thousands of people showing up. We knew that wouldn't happen. It doesn't happen anywhere. We did it so they could. That's my opinion.
Director Snow.
Thank you, and I agree with most of what Director Martin had just said.
Most?
Almost all. But just to add to it, you know, one of the things I've been most proud about serving on this board over the last few years with all of you is our laser focus on increasing transparency and integrity of the district. And Director Martin did mention that he campaigned on this very item, and I know for a fact that other board members, when they were running, campaigned on this item. And I think that we run the risk of breaking those campaign promises if we do change it at this point. While I do appreciate and applaud Director Hernandez for being fiscally mindful, and I know this is going to be a challenging year for us from a budgetary standpoint and looking at cuts across the board, I think we have a good opportunity right now with a new general manager on board to look at all of our expenses, and this being included. And I think that the direction tonight should not be to change our meeting time, but to allow our new general manager some more time to assess the district operation and cost, and come back and give us a plan, a comprehensive plan on what he recommends that we take action on for cutting those costs. And this could be part of that at that time, but right now I think it would be not only go against everything that we've stood for from a transparency standpoint and what we've campaigned on from our promises to the public, but I think it'd be premature to make the change at this time.
Okay.
I have a motion on the
well, they don't have clear
Not a
direction.
motion.
We just
A
want
correction.
Oh, it was a motion for direction, actually.
Correct.
And was there a second? Director Evans?
I would like, if you want a second to the motion, I think it's really just consensus on direction, I don't know if it's really a motion, but I think we should do all that's been advised. I think we should look at 3 o'clock and what the difference would be. I think it's wise to have you show where the money is being spent to make up the 10,000. I think we also have an obligation to take into consideration what we're asking of salaried employees to stay until 9 or 10 at night, even as we start late. I believe the transparency is in great minutes and the TV show. I think when we know that people are really involved, I don't know if it should be 3, maybe it should be back to 4, but I think 5 actually is sort of a witching hour. It's not really early enough to get anything done to help you in the evening, and it's not late enough that you've got everything ready to come. That's, I think, why when you're on the council, 6 o'clock meetings made a lot of sense. The water district really is not one that the public comes to in the same way, so I think it's more important that we're putting out our facts in our media. So I'd like us to look at a way to make a compromise here. I think we are spending a lot on transparency, that the option of transparency does not mean transparency. And if we wanted to get into being transparent, there's a great many things I would have liked to have seen out for the whole public that had nothing to do with the time of the meeting or anything. So I would like the direction to be to consider what those 2 time changes, 3 and 4 would be instead of 5, to take in Hal's consideration of exactly how we came up with where the money was spent and what is the impact on the employees and how the 980 works, which I will plead ignorant on. I'm not quite sure how it works.
Yeah.
So if you can have that, maybe we need a little session to explain it better.
Director Snow.
But I applaud the attempt.
Point of clarification on the salaried employees. Again, while I appreciate them coming here to the meeting, I think they kind of well know what they got themselves into with this type of public position. But I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but where I come from, the private sector, salaried managers usually have some flexibility with their work schedule that on nights where they know they're going to be working till 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, they may not necessarily come in at 7 in the morning like they might typically do. They have the flexibility to adjust their schedule. Is that not the case here at Vallecitos?
So managers typically do have more flexibility in their schedule, but in my short tenure and duration here, none of the managers really take advantage of that. They don't say, hey, it's gonna be a long meeting tonight, I won't come in until 10 in the morning to make up for it. They're usually here at their regular start time, and they just stay as long as it takes to get it done.
And to, my recommendation for the direction being provided, which I guess what will be the next motion after this one, but will be, as part of that evaluation process, and I respect the fact, General Manager Pruitt, that you're new, but one of the things I think that you're going to be doing is, as part of your overall comprehensive evaluation, is identifying maybe who doesn't need to be at board meetings. I mean, historically, we've had folks who've come and really just sat in the audience, right? And they're being paid to be here because just in case, but there may be a different way of doing that, and that's another thing that we can consider, is while still being able to hold the meetings at a time when the public can attend. I would agree with Director Evans that 5 o'clock is a little bit of a weird hour because people are usually getting off work right around 5 o'clock, doesn't give them a chance to eat. If we're going to change the meetings at all, I think 6:30 to align it with most government agencies would probably be far more appropriate than going down to 3 or 4 o'clock.
May I?
Director Martin first.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And I agree, if we're gonna realign it, I think we need to realign it till 6 o'clock, if anything. I think the 980 program, which I've seen used in other facilities, functions very well. And it functions very well on meeting days. Because there's a day in every 980 program, every 2 weeks. There is one day that needs to be a longer day for people to make up for the time they're getting off for that Friday. there's a trade-off going on there. I mean, we may not use it here, but there is a trade-off. And that allows, I think City Hall used to be open until 7:30 on Tuesdays, or whatever our meeting days were. I mean, it allows for that. When you look at the times here, most of the times we're here are 2 hours, 2.5 hours max. When it's longer than that, we start the meetings earlier. So I'd also like someone to look at that and really, instead of making this, numbers can lie, whatever. This is made to look a lot worse than it is, because if you look at the days at the long hours, we start at 9 o'clock in the morning. We don't work, we're not here till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. It doesn't happen.
We have been here a couple.
Once or twice, but
Well,
certainly
once
not
or
25
twice.
times.
I didn't say it was, I'm
I'm
just
saying,
saying
if
we
you look
have
at the
been.
average, excuse me,
Have been.
if you look at the average, it's less than about 2.5 hours. So we're out of here by 7:30. And that's more than taken care of in the 980 program. And I will mention that I happened to come in and I saw Tom on New Year's Eve. Tom and Chris. I want you guys to work that day. And that was a Friday, so that must have been the off Friday. I'm guessing it's the off Friday. I'm just saying, the 980 program works, and it works for meetings. I don't know why we need to change it.
Director Evans.
Well, my only other question was, Director Sinella suggested we look at late to be in line with other government, but I'd like to actually see what time the other districts hold their meetings throughout San Diego County and be in line with water districts and sewer districts. I think that's more valid than being lined up with civic centers, and that's just my opinion. So I'd like that information. We can talk about it whenever we get to it.
Director Hernandez.
I think you've heard from the board what the board needs to have this brought to us next agenda, or if it takes longer than that, then the following agenda, so that we can make an informed decision, and that's really why I brought it up. I thought we had some information, now we'll get more information, and then when that comes before, we can have this discussion thoroughly with information that we'll have had ahead of time to digest, multiply, divide, and make sure it's all correct. So
I agree with that. It's clear to me that there's no clear direction.
So do it all.
Well, and if I may, I don't want to compare us to other water districts. I think we're cut above. I think we can become that way by our transparency awards. I think we're striving. Our staff are all platinum staff. I just don't want to compare ourselves, because they were always known as shadow governments. And I think we're stepping out of that, and I think Vallecitos is taking the lead in doing that. And I want to see us continue to lead and not follow the other districts.
President?
Right,
Yeah, and since we're giving direction, if you can also come back and just verify that if any of these things that we've implemented, televising the meetings, changing the meeting times to when the public can attend, if that went towards us earning recently our District of Distinction Award, and if making these changes and going against transparency in this way would jeopardize that in any way, I'd certainly like to appreciate hearing that information. And then on the other water districts, I ran into, was it Helix or Padre at a meeting? They don't even have a legal counsel for their meetings. I mean, I don't want to follow these people. I mean, just two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, it's just, we're going to do it our way, we're going to do it the best way, and we're going to lead the industry, not following other water districts.
Director Evans.
I appreciate the discussions about my request, but my request still holds. Would you please let me know what times the other districts, we can decide amongst ourselves at the appropriate time. But I would appreciate knowing when they hold their meetings. And I really don't care about who's at their meetings, I'm just asking about the time they're held. Thank you.
Maybe if I can provide a little clarification on a couple of items. So one, the 980 schedule does not mean that 1 or 2 days a week they work longer. You typically work a longer day every day that you work, except the Friday that you do work. So for example, the core hours would be 7:30 to 5:30 for a 980 schedule every day until the Friday you do work, and then you'd work 7:30 to 4:30 would be the typical core hours. So they wouldn't say, hey, on Wednesday, we want you to work 4 extra hours to make up for the day you'll be off on the Friday. It's just slightly longer hours every day that you do work. So it wouldn't jive with the meeting schedule that's your long day.
I've seen it done other ways, I'm not saying
Yeah, I'm just trying to explain how ours
980 to
operates.
980, you can do that however you want to.
Right. And the other thing is, we do have supporting documentation for the estimated $10,000 in costs for the overtime, and we can certainly provide that to the board as to how we calculated that. We actually looked at the meetings, which staff members attended, how long did they attend for, how many hours of overtime did that cost the district? So we can provide that.
Great, thank you.
Well, we don't need to vote on anything, do we?
No, I think,
I don't think so.
okay.
There, I think you got it.
They've
Done.
got- They've got ample direction.
They got it. Okay.
Okay, item 2.4, impact of marijuana cultivation on available water supply.
Mr. Scaglione will take this one.
On a lighter topic, this was requested by Director Hernandez just to show, does the legalization of marijuana impact, will it impact our water supply? It's kind of an impossible question to answer because you don't know what the resulting, extension of growth and cultivation will be. So the way we approached it analytically was to take a lot of very conservative assumptions to avoid getting too much into the weeds here. And so population, we looked at growth every year, the average of 5 years, adding 1,620 people a year. And then on top of that, to be very conservative, just assume that Newland is on board in 3 years and all 6,000 people, that are associated with that are on board. And then we also looked at gallons per capita per day to apply that to, and we assumed a 40% increase. So again, very conservative assumptions, and they're all there in your memo on page 72, and how this is calculated. And we also assumed dry years. We assumed 3 dry years, and at the end of that 3 dry years, we'd still have enough water available to cultivate 3.5 million pounds of marijuana. And that would actually require about 6,460 acres. And out of our 27,000 acres in the district, that would mean that 1 in 4 acres are converted to marijuana fields. So in other words, that's how much marijuana you need to produce with those conservative assumptions in order to have some impact, negative impact on your water supply. So this was just provided for information. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you for the report.
Great report, all on assumptions, and just tell us how much time you and your staff spent on this, so we have a dollar amount to tell Mr. Hernandez what it cost to come up with that silly report.
Yeah, actually, I just did it myself for a couple of hours, and
Couple hours at your rate of pay? or
I'm exempt.
$12,000?
Well, I'm exempt, so there's no marginal cost.
We just made it to $9,000 right
There
there.
you go.
Well, my next motion will be to start growing marijuana on that avocado property and really make some money.
What about the hill right
The
behind
hill,
us?
Yeah, right? Oh, yeah, even better, it's closer.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Any other questions on that item? Okay. All right, on to reports, 3.1, General Manager.
We have a speaker on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Oh,
Really?
yeah, who could that be?
How could I have missed it? Mr. Hunsaker?
I had one on the previous one as well.
And I think you're right, I apologize. Why don't you speak on both items?
Okay, since that was, both of these are informational items.
Yeah, we didn't take a vote.
Reason to stand on ceremony.
Didn't miss anything.
On the special meetings, I think $10,000 is a pretty small price for an organization this size to degrade principles, so I agree with Mr. Martin and with Mr. Sinella on that one. And I violently disagree with my division leader, because 6 o'clock makes a much more sense. You can't really take a bad hour for having meetings and using that and say, well, so many few people attended. If it's 6 o'clock, then you can make the argument. Also, when I was looking into the reserve policies, I found that a number of these very key financial elements were covered in special meetings. And there was little or no notice, and there isn't any real easy way to dig out these special meeting reports and ordinances or policies. So one of the things that can be done is to have fewer special meetings and have those rolled into the regular meetings. Thank you, on that subject. Okay.
2.4.
2.4, the marijuana situation. Assumption 1, population will grow by 1,620 per year. Well, that's based on about 500 new residences a year, which we sustained during the recession. Newland, all by itself, is about 2,135 residences. We have 6 or 7 pages of new construction going on. So I find the assumption 1 very inappropriate. Gallons per day per capita will escalate. I don't think the state's going to allow that, but I can understand it's being in there for conservatism. Agriculture will use 1,200 acre feet of water per year. Well, that's an average. But for Newland, you have granted them an exemption from any sort of rationing or any sort of ceiling use. Every other agricultural endeavor has a very heavy cutbacks required in cases of drought. But here we have unlimited water. The other factor is that marijuana grows best and is almost entirely restricted below the 35th parallel. It requires heat. We have the only heat. It requires very pure water. And even our regular water is not necessarily good. There's grown marijuana in the north because of lack of enforcement, and they had pure water. Here we are with the only really pure water in the county. We're the only county which is prepared for the drought and has water. So it looks like Newland Sierra could be looking at about $500 million of revenue with the 378 acres it has in its, quote, fire protection zone. If you are going to make this feasible, rational, there should be a maximum amount of water per acre allowed, at a minimum. There should be no exemption from rationing for one special interest or one particular development. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 3.1, General Manager's Report.
All right, so first of all, I'd like to say Happy New Year to the board. So it's exciting, and to all of our staff members as well. 2017 will likely be a very busy year, so I hope everybody's all well rested. I'm directing that mostly to the staff, so I'm sure we'll be very busy, and that's good, and there's a lot of challenges ahead of us. Just a few things I want to pass along. One is the Table A allocation. As many of you may be aware, we get water from the State Water Project, and they put out an initial Table A allocation, which is basically what percentage of the water being requested can be provided based on the climatic conditions that exist. An initial value of 20% was issued on November 28th of 2016, and based on the rain and snowfall that came, the state has actually increased that Table A allocation up to 45%. That's a great start to a year, and the storms keep coming, so hopefully they'll keep coming and the agencies will get all the water they need and they can fill their reservoirs and better prepare for the dry years that will come subsequently, so that is good news. Just a little heads up on upcoming board items. So next meeting on the 18th, we'll have 3. These are not the only 3 items, but just to let the board know these are coming. We'll be talking about the pump zone charges will be on the agenda. We'll give an analysis of the main breaks that was requested, what's happening with some of our water main breaks, and we'll be bringing forward information on the appraisal for the Knoll Road property, the adjacent bluff that we have here. Another meeting that's coming up is the Finance Committee will be meeting on January 25th. We're going to have monthly meetings of the Finance Committee, and the one in January will be on the 25th. The Water and Wastewater Master Planning Workshop will be conducting at the end of January. Have not selected a date yet, but we're shooting for the end of January. It's possible that it would slide into the beginning of February, depending on the board members' availability. And I believe that will be a workshop for all board members, not just a committee. I'm working on setting up a strategic planning process. No date determined yet, but I'm talking to some consultants and getting an idea of what it would cost and how we'd go about it. So I'll try to keep the board updated on that. And I've met with the San Marcos city manager to talk about areas of joint interest. And we haven't come up with a date or schedule of what we would discuss, but we are in ongoing discussions about items that may be of a mutual interest between the city and the district. And that's all I have to report tonight.
Question? Just a comment. I just want, Glenn, just to say thank you for how you opened up your report with giving us some highlights of the bigger issues, especially the kind of the items that we self-generated, and when they're going to be falling in line in future meetings, especially like the next couple of meetings. That's never been done before, so I don't know if anybody asked you to do that, but thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Yeah, I realize sometimes the board suffers from an information vacuum. You may ask for something, and we're busy working on it, but we don't tell you, so we owe it to you to at least let you know when it's coming. And sometimes it may be delayed, but just knowing that is sometimes of value to you.
Director Martin?
And seeing this is your report time, I'd like to thank you for the reports that you have given to us and the information you've given to us with the overriding information you've given to us. I appreciate the way that you're conducting the business of the general manager very much, and I think it's kept me very much informed and knowing what's going on. So I appreciate your transparency and your openness.
Good, thank you. That's good feedback. I appreciate it.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you.
Third that, for sure. It's a new opportunity, a new year, and new information that we have not seen in the past. And some of these items that you brought up that are going to be coming up in the next agendas or 2 or 3 are things that we've been waiting on for quite some time. So thank you for giving us a heads up.
You're welcome.
I'll just ditto everything.
Thank you.
All right, 3.2, District Legal Counsel.
I'll confine mine to closed session.
All right. 3.3, San Diego County Water Authority, Director Evans.
Well, actually, the first meeting hasn't occurred, and we didn't have one in December, but I am still on the Water Planning Commission as committee as vice chair, and on the legislative conservation and output committee this year. And there's been a change in some of the situations, so I don't know, but I've been under option to also be a vice chair on there. So I will let you know if that happens. But, and that's really all.
Thank
except
you.
for water.
3.4, Encino Wastewater Authority.
Well, we have not had a meeting yet this year for capital and/or board.
Okay, I have no report either since there was no Policy and Finance Committee meeting. 3.5, Standing Committees. Anything to report? Director Rennie?
Not relative to a standing committee, but in Aqua, I am a member of the Groundwater Committee, and that committee is expanding into a land use planning group. Those of us that have been on the board for any number of years have heard that, the water district is not a land use authority, we just react. Well, we react in different ways and can react in other different ways. So Aqua has put together this planning group, of which I have made application to see, in fact, what we can or should not be doing relative to land use. So we'll see how that rolls.
Good news.
Okay, 3.6, Director's Reports on Travel, Conferences, Seminars. Anybody?
I don't believe I've had anything since the last meeting.
I don't think so either.
Okay.
Oh, I had a meeting with the general manager.
Oh, and I did
Successful.
too.
We talked about
Yeah.
quite a number of items, and I'm looking forward to many more.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not really travel and conferences, but maybe it's a seminar, I
I don't know, yeah.
don't know. All right, other business, there's information in the board package on the CSDA workshop coming up. 5.1, Director's Comments. Start with Director Evans.
At this moment, I don't have any.
Okay.
None?
None for me. Director Martin.
Huh?
Director Snell.
Yeah, is this also the future agenda item? Or is that coming up next?
That's
And I don't know necessarily if this needs to be, I had a couple other questions on ordinance 201 that I forgot to bring up. Do we need to talk about this at the next meeting, or can we bring it up? Or can I just get a couple clarifying things on that?
Just revise us what your
Yeah,
questions
so-
are, and we'll come back with them at the same
I
time.
wasn't on the board when, I know this is relatively new, it was, where'd it go? Bear with me for a second here. Oh, I'm looking at notes, I'm sorry, guys.
No problem, take your time.
1.9 B. There was verbiage recently added to this ordinance a few years back pertaining to basically the reorganization of the board after an election, and that as it pertains to the election of the president. And there's a word in here that I just want to clarify if I'm understanding it correctly, but it says that will reorganize annually to provide each elected director will have the opportunity to hold the office of president once during their first term. The word first, does that mean that now that we've all are either in or beyond our first term, and we've all now served as president at least once, that there's no like, it's just a vote of, it's open to anybody every single year thereafter, and I'll defer to the board members that were here when this was put in, or does that mean that your first elected term, each time you're reelected? I'm not, I just wanted to clarify that.
I'll begin to take that on, because it was under my watch that we had to make a serious reshuffle, and I believe that was for Director Martin, who was not going to be president during his first term, and one of the other board members had been president a number of times, so in fact, I asked that board member if they would step aside, and they did. And so that accomplished the policy. We have rotated the presidency since I've been on, and I think for a long time, so I think that really was just to ensure that elected official during their first term would get an opportunity to be a president.
So going back to my original question, then now that until we get a new board member that comes on the board, we're just, you get 3 votes and you're president.
We rotate
I
through
think
is the
we
word.
rotate. I don't know
Well, I
that
don't
we
see
ever
anything in
did.
here
But
that
it
says
doesn't,
the word
no.
rotate.
Doesn't say that.
It says it rotates, isn't that, you just read it. The board annual.
It reorganizes, but it doesn't rotate.
Reorganizes.
Yeah,
So the
reorganize
way
is
it had
completely
been
different than
done-
rotate.
The way it's been done, and the board is interesting, the board is kind of sitting right now how it was the first year Hal and I came on, and I was in your seat. Jim was actually being president, and there were 2 people here who were long-term board members. And the way it was at that time, it wasn't about voting for who's gonna, it was just, we rotated through the list, so assuming we all kept getting reelected, you all just got one turn after another, in sequence.
But
Does that make sense to you?
That-
That's how it was, just,
Yeah,
do you
okay.
understand how it was?
I get that, yeah.
Okay, so doing that, it meant that by the time it rotated on the 4th year, Hal would still be sitting, but he wouldn't be president. If he didn't get reelected, he wouldn't get an opportunity. So Hal and I actually initiated, and I was one who made the motion that we include the first, because it said at your first year that we wanted to make sure it was your first elected year.
Okay,
in
so
your first
now
term.
we're
So the
back.
intent was, yes, but there's no guarantee what will happen in 2 years from now
Yeah,
either.
or even in,
No, so
7
in
months
2
from now.
years from now, if it changes,
Yeah.
that person who's ever there, let's say 1 or 2 of you both were to change out the next election, those people will be first to be president
But
in their
yeah.
4-year term.
So, but there's no rotation currently. Now that
Not a
we've met
guaranteed
the
one.
obligation, we're compliant with our ordinance as it stands. We've all had
Yes.
at least one term where we've all served as president.
Yes.
Yep.
So going forward until there's a new board member, this word first term is irrelevant to us. We will elect, when we reorganize, we will elect a new president.
Right, but to become, I think the way the prior board did it all the time when Jim was on before, the reason they rotated was they didn't want it to become a political vote issue. It was simply they all agreed they'd take rotational terms. And that's why our thing was a bit of a problem, because where Hal was
Yeah.
seated, he wouldn't rotate through.
That's what's nice about policies, is that it dictates what we can do, and we can look at it, and it gives us guidance and direction
So
of what we
maybe we
agree
want to
to.
bring this forward to talk about.
I think
some
that's a
other
good
time.
point.
Maybe we do.
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree. And the other thing is, the other question I had is, I'd like staff to also bring forward, much like we have for the board president, where everybody's allowed an opportunity to serve as president once during their first term, I'd like to add language in this ordinance in the future, or at least be considered by the board, to add similar language for the three positions, the two Encina positions and the water authority position, that every board member has the opportunity to serve on one of those. If they like to, they don't have to accept it, but if they like to, at least once during their four-year term. In particular, for a couple reasons, because those are paid positions, so I think everybody should have an opportunity to go through that. But also, those are positions that I think not only gives the board members an opportunity to contribute to those organizations, but also enhance their growth and will be better board members for Vallecitos for it. And I feel like we haven't had a lot of change in those positions since, I haven't seen any change, I don't think, really, other than when Director Vallecitos came on board. Since I've been here, it's been the same people, and there's not really been a lot of opportunity for others to participate. So we can bring that language back to consider adding that into the ordinance.
Okay, bring that forward, 201.
Yeah, I think it's always been, from my understanding, from what I can tell the water district, Jeff would know this far better, but I'm not gonna ask him, is that it's been a general person's agreement that we go in rotation as far as who's the presiding person, because presiding person really has no authority. Still 20% of the people. They do a little more interaction with the GM, but it's always been, now could it have any time? And it might have been once, if I remember correctly, but all the cities used to be this way too. And then, they all changed to, most of them have changed now to voting mayor. City of San Marcos used to be the same way. Because over the years, what happened where someone changed that rotation and someone felt jilted. And so the rotation thing has always been a general person's agreement, I think, at the water district. As far as the other items, I think together, but I don't see it as an ordinance or.
Well, so, just to, it is a gentleman's agreement until it's not.
Right.
So, when I was vice chair, going into chair, there were board members that were advocating and lobbying other board members not to vote for me.
Oh,
So-
wait, that's not true. The
Oh, how do you
policy
know?
at that time said in your first elected 4 years, and the only conflict with you coming in before I changed the policy the night we made that vote, the policy said elected 4-year term. And we removed the 4 years in order that you could be on there. It wasn't about you, Mike, it was about the policy. The policy read, if we follow the policy, that you were not eligible to be president. But we all changed the policy so you could be.
I've heard the story from multiple sources.
Would you like to see the prior policy? You can look at the prior policy.
It's not about the policy, it was about appointments and all kinds of lobbying going on.
It was policy, the
No,
policy.
but it wasn't about policy. Publicly, you're saying it's about policy. I'm telling you, it wasn't. I was lobbied for appointments and all kinds of things and had to make deals to make it work. Okay, and they were coming from you. So it's a gentleman's.
What deal did I give you?
Okay, let's,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't have to get, yeah, we don't
I
have to get
didn't make a
this
deal
argument.
with
But
you.
if it's not written down and it's not clear policy, it's a gentleman's
Was very
agreement until it's not.
Right.
we've got some direction for staff to come
Yeah,
back with
please.
some options to consider. Okay, well, that was a spirited conversation.
We're done.
First of many.
First of many,
That
yes,
concludes our
absolutely.
open session items. We're ready to go into closed session, and so I'll entertain a motion.
Move to go into closed session.
I second at 6:20.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carried unanimously.